Okay, welcome. So we should be starting right now. I'm going to make sure that I have that on my MS Teams. So, hey, Xavier, how are you doing? So I think it should be there. I have two. Okay, 2 and 1 like. Already cool. Okay, so today what we're going to talk about is, and today might be a very cool session. So I might keep it, when it's a keeper in a way, I keep it public probably a little bit longer, such as people can watch them, might be a series. But we're going to talk about our code design and implementations. So this is of MCP sampling, sorry. So the goal here is the MCP sampling. We did the function last time, the async function registration, which was it's always kind of a little journey. But today here, we're going to be able to plug into the whole thing, the whole workflow. And that is going to be very cool because we're going to start looking at how the stream is going to be the stream between the client and the server and the client and the transport and the server. So it's going to be very, very cool. And I think let me see, it's coming back here. The thing will be something like this, will be public. I don't know if it's going to be until June. Usually I messed up here. It should be 24 hours. I might keep it until next week, so we'll see that. But if you want it, make sure you comment out below and then I will keep it longer. Okay, so that is the thing. And today what we're going to do is actually I prepared a pretty cool kind of slide here, slide deck. And so what we have done is the MCP sampling. And so the MCP sampling and all of that is in Rust and it's our agentic crate. So we're going to look at the code. And when you are building an agentic host, it's a cloud or an application. So cloud desktop is an MCP host. Most of the web application from Anthropic and Gemini and so on are also MCP hosts because they allow you to register some MCP servers. But when you do a desktop apps, it's also an MCP host. So for example, AI Pack, I want it to become also an MCP host. And it will be everything actually, because it will allow you to create your own MCP server and so on. So that's why I did the MCP the agentic crate to be able to allow people to do that, including myself, obviously. By the way, here in the live, you can join in the MS team over there, this link, and then you should be able to join for real-time participation for people that want to do that. And then I hear you in my ear, and then it shouldn't echo. Okay, so today here, the MCP client is going to talk to, so we already done that, but the trick here is a sampling. And the way sampling works is sometimes when we talk to an MCP server, to a tools, part of the MCP protocol is to say, hey, the tool cannot do its jobs without talking to AI. So rather to have the MCP talking to AI, because then you have a license key and all of that, sometimes that makes sense. So in agentic, that will make sense. But sometimes what you want is the MCP server to say, hey, to complete this task, I need to ask you a question, such as you can answer it to me. The trick with that, and it's very cool because Rust is very powerful. So like in a way, the way I see Rust is allow us to do a cloud app on a desktop, on a mobile device, because of all of this MCP and all these kind of things. And so the way it works is that now the client is going to become the server because the sampling is going to send back a JSON RPC request because everything is based on JSON RPC. And so it will send, the sampling will send something to the MCP client and say, hey, can you give me this response for this prompt? And then the client will respond it. So the client, even within the same session, is becoming a server. And that is where, it's adding a very interesting, at least from an engineering design standpoint, a very interesting concept. And then later as well, the agentic crate will also allow us to do the MCP server as well. Yeah, so it will allow us to do this kind of things as well. So that is the way it works. So Now, I'm going to go through the whole code design right now, and then we're going to go deep in code. So this channel is about coding. Yeah, it's not about PowerPoint. And this is not even PowerPoint, it's SketchUp, which is awesome. So the thing here is, if we go back here, for example, on this guy, the way it works is like that. We have, within the MCP, we have a client struct and a transport struct. And today, actually, the code design is not like this. We're going to make it do like that. So today is not like that. So we have the client and we have the transport. And that is all of the client-initiated request. And the way that I've designed the thing, which was very cool because then it kind of worked and it kind of scaled very well. Within the agentic MCP module, I have a client struct, I have a transport struct. The way they talk together is with channels, this whole MSCP and so on. And the goal of that is to decouple, the details of the protocol, which you don't want to expose to the client, because then the client will have to know too much, and it's kind of a pain. And moreover, it goes very well with the design of MCP, which is they decouple the transport from the implementation, in a way, of the body, the payload. So this layer is responsible to take the string or whatever comes from the transport. The transport doesn't have to be too smart. There's a caveat to that, but we'll see that later. And then it does this stuff, and then it communicates back to the transport, and the transport then knows how to send to the MCP. So usually when you design any kind of application, and that is beyond Rust, is beyond client or command line or stuff, is for cloud app, for services, for multi-service, macro service. I don't like the term macro services because for me, the right thing is multi-services. Some are big, some are small, doesn't really matter, but that is the goal of the architecture. And usually what you do is a part of the system, which could be service or some modules, you want them to be smart at one thing and dumb at everything else. And that is super important, yeah, because this is, sometimes people are calling that the separation of concerns and all these kind of things. But then sometimes people build all-in-one frameworks, which is another issue. But the point here is to say the transport is not in the business of understanding the semantics. I mean, the goal is to have it understanding as less as possible of the semantic of the payload and just focusing on transferring the payloads. So that is the design. And so that is what the client, so this notation here that we're going to see is C2S, which means client to server request. And there will be a pair of RX and TX. And then we have a server, the pair of this guy is going to be the S to C, which is server to client, and that will be the response. And that again will have a RX or TX. And then the client will split themselves between the RS and TX because depending on their responsibility. That is already the way that I have it in my code, but I didn't do the rename. So we're going to do that first. And the reason why we need to do that is because, again, this little guy over there, this guy, I didn't. So this little guy over there, so this is the thing, sorry, I didn't overlay it. C2S, client to server, request, and then that will eventually trigger a server to client request. And both of them have a RX and a TX. And then, because we have this sampling business where our client become a server once in a while, we need to have the server to client request, which has an RX and TX, and the client to server response, which has that. This one is a std-er, which doesn't always have a symmetry on the other guy. Yeah. So that is the way it works. So now what we're going to do here is in our code, so now that we have seen that, if we go to our transport, so done some cleanup here, I'm going to push it to origin. I think I've done some I've changed a little bit the sampling handler, but that was details. So now what we're going to do is the way it works is we have the client, and then the client is giving us the API. So that is the goal of the client. Yeah. Hey, Norm Mohammed. Thank you for joining. I think it's the first time here you join, or at least you ping something, but welcome. These sessions are pretty deep, but eventually, hopefully, you will get something. Okay, cool. We have Ilam on the MS team. Feel free to unmute and say hello to see if it works. And then we'll see if you can, but otherwise, no big deal. So the thing is, the way it is structured is we have all of the types over there of the MCP. And so MCP has quite a bit of type, and this is actually pretty complete. So this crate is, let me see if I have, oh yeah, cool. This crate has what? Has the, this crate is agentic. And so it's very early, but it's starting to get quite complete from a type standpoint. And then there's this whole interaction here that I'm not rushing it because I want to get it right. So the ergonomic of this crate, which is basically the goal is to have the MCP or the A2A, it's already pretty good. Yeah, so the ergonomic is good. I'm relatively happy with the ergonomic, but there's quite a bit of things that we need to do on the transport. So the simple transport is done, we do the sampling, and then it will do the server. So from a typing standpoint, all of these guys are pretty well mature. This guy on the client side is working pretty well. And in fact, what I like to do when I develop things, my best practices, is I do have this client, things there. So when I develop a crate, a libraries, unit tests or test in general is very important. And as soon as you can get into a test-driven kind of mode, is great. But at the beginning, where I'm not sure about the API and stuff, I have these things, and here I put client prefix because I like to order my things, and I'm going to have client examples and then server examples because this crate will be for both. But here I do this chapter 01, which is basically an order of simple to more complex or more advanced, Yeah? It's not too dogmatic. But the simple is always the easiest one and the one where I would like people to start. So we have the tracing, we have command line, so we're using the default model context protocol here, several things, and then we connect over there, we send a request, which is based on list tool params, and then we're going to list all the tools. So now, if I do a cargo watch example, which is cargo watch -q -c-x and example, or you can say cargo run examples, or use a cargo watch exec. And then what you do is something like that, where you are going to do cargo watch example and then client C01 sample. And that will not work because it's not sample, it's simple. And that will call the command line over stdio because that is what the protocol that we have done here. And then it will list all the tools. So that is very cool because now the ergonomic of the PI, everything is type. So and it's pretty cool the way it works. One day I might do a video to explain, and it's fully typed, yeah? So you send a request, and because you send that becomes a list tool request, and the list tool request is linked into the MCP response, which has one generic, which is a result type. And so that really follows the JSON RPC, but it's fully typed, and then we can do that. So that's pretty nice, it's fully typed. Now, one of the things is we have call tools here, and we have the HTTP protocol, so that is cute. But then one of the things that we have been doing here is what we're calling sampling in the, MCP protocol. What sampling is, again, as I was explaining before, when the guy, I'm going to Actually, I can show that. This one is a pretty cool diagram. And this, I'm going to evolve it over time and things, but it's a good start. So when I am in a client mode, I have my client interface, which the user can use. And then it talks to the transport, and the transport talks to the MCP server. So that is the way it works. And then, again, sampling, sometimes you call a tool, and the tool say, hey, I need more. So now the client here, this guy, become a server. And so it's going to take actually a server to client request. It's going to take it. It's going to take a request. And so we want to send that event, such as the client can loop through those guys and then process them. Yeah? The nice thing about that is everything is kind of asynchronous and can scale very nicely. So now what we're going to do here is if we look at this guy, that is what we did in another live. So, sorry. Okay. So now, one of the things here is that what we're doing is we're doing a client here, and so we're connecting with the config. And then this is just to show that we can register a sampling handler. And then this silly thing that I've done here, which is obviously silly, is to show that the closure can capture data. Here we're not using the async closure. Oh, we're using the async closure. Interesting. No, we're using the async closure. So that is probably the next one here. Oh, that's starting to work. So that's pretty interesting. It's better than the stuff. And then things. Great question here, Savipor. Okay, so I'm going to go there. I'm going to answer your question here. Great question. What is the S2C aux? I'm going to go there. So the sampling guy here, the code design is you use a client, you connect, and then you register a sampling handler, which has for goal to get this create message params, which is the way the spec is calling it. And then you get the messages, you get the max token, the model preference and everything, and then we can run it in AI, okay? Now, on this example here, we will just return a hello world or echo. We're not going to run the AI, but we could, okay? Which GenAI create. But that is the point. Right now, because I don't want to write too much, I'm returning this error at this point. So then after, here is a little best practice that I like to have. This one was mutable. When you register a sampling, it's mutable. Then everything after is not mutable. That is just a Jeremy thing, which is I like to assign it to a non-mutable variable, such as then I know that below is not mutable. Just my way. You can do it whatever you want. Now the client, like many clients of GenAI, is made to be clonable. So then I can clone it, such as I can spawn it. Yeah. And the way we did it before is we spawn the request, and that is a sample LLM of the demo request that is going to be sent, such as the tool will say, hey, I'm going to prompt you back. It's a mock, yeah? I'm going to prompt you back a sample event request to say, give me whatever. And then you give me the prompt and I will answer you back the prompt. And so what we did here is before it was hanging because I didn't process these things. Yeah? So here I did a hack where now I do the before, I do the request, I do the after. So if after, this means that the sampling has been processed. But the ugly hack is that I'm sleeping here to make sure that this one gets first. And then here I'm sending the response with the ID 0 to fake it that it was thing. So this is super ugly, and this is what we're going to remove today because we're going to do the proper way. Yeah? Such as this guy will be called. Okay. That might be a series, but that's the goal. So hopefully that answers these kind of things. Now, if we do a cargo watch example, and we're going to do a client C04 sampling. everything should work nicely. Hopefully I didn't break anything. And then it worked nicely. Yeah, so we have the before and stuff. Now, I'm going to go through those guys. This one is the IO error. So again, if you look at the spec here of MCP, support two main protocols by default, and then you can customize your own protocol. The first one is STD-IO, and the second one is HTTP. They have two ways, the SSE and the streamable HTTP, which is very similar. The SSE is getting deprecated, but I think there's a lot of server with SSE, so it's going to be interesting to know, when it's actually going to get deprecated. But the STD-IO, in STD-IO, we know that we have STD-in, which is the thing, STD-out, which is the STD-out, and STD-R, ERR. STD-R is not really in the protocol because, you send with STD-in, you receive with STD-out, and STD-out is not a thing in MCP because MCP just communicate there. I don't think it's in the standard, but there's a convention or an acceptance to say, hey, if you have an STD-IO IO server, you can use STD-R as a console log or tracing log. Yeah, so they are not structured image messages. I mean, they can if you want, but the MCP is not part of the MCP protocol, but you can send stuff. And that is what's happening here. What we're seeing over there, this guy is actually the Node.js STD-IO server that say, hey, starting default IO server. That is what he's saying. And then this one is because one out is getting dropped, one request is getting dropped right now, which is normal. And so I think this one, if we go there, and I'm going to do a search on this guy, the client implementation here, and it's saying I'm not supporting this yet. And so that is the way that I'm doing things. Because it's event-based, you don't want to crash, because if you crash, then everything kind of collapses. Yeah? So now we're going to go back there, and then we're going to go, and I'm going to answer your question here, the things. We're going to kind of refactor the MCP things. So we're going to go to the client transport, and we have this communication TRX. And what I call TRX is a transmit and receivers. Yeah. So the senders, those guys, the one that transmit, then we say TX because, with S, it will be people will be laughing all the time and won't be coding. But so the thing I'm saying is to say, this is a TX, and then that is a receiver. And you want to create a pair at the same time, because that's the way it works, obviously. But then I'm splitting them out into two things here, which is the one that will go to the client and the one that will go to the transport. And obviously they are the opposite one, yeah? So all the time it thinks. Now this one, the way I created it, because I started it, they are designed to be cross-transport, but when I created them for the STD-IO, and so I did this way to solve other problems. So now we're going to go back to it, and we're going to start renaming those, yeah? So one of the things here is that the in, that is a request to the server from the client. So it's going to be we're going to rename it C2S, and that will be the request, and that will be the TX, okay? So we're going to keep the same metaphor here. Okay, so now this is when we want to send something to the server, we're using that. And everything works nicely in a way here. I'm just compiling. Then this one here, I'm going to rename it. It's again, it was based on STD-out here, but the STD-out, when you talk to MCP server, is because it's STD-out because you receive from the server. So I'm going to do S2C. And this S2C is just something I made up here, such as my brain kind of, because otherwise I'm always like, it can get very tricky, yeah? So that is the way I designed the convention which obviously you have only one dimension, but I design it such as, you know, by looking at it, my brain can say, oh, okay, that is that direction and for that. So now the server to client is a response. So I put the res. Yeah. Again, you have to know because there's multiple channels and we're going to see that. So this guy is a TX here. And that is the RX. Yeah, so I'm receiving that. Okay. So that is good. And so in a way here, what we just did, we should have done C2S rec, S2C res. And I think I'm messed up. S2C res. Okay. This is that. This error channel, this guy, is what I'm calling in my code design. This one, and I'm reading here. I'm going to read John here. Your great question. I'm doing this guy, which is this one. I'm sorry. So that is your answer here, Xavier. Is I'm putting an aux such as is a little bit more generic, okay, and it's a thing that is not MCP-ish. And right now I have a warn. My accent is terrible, but I'm going to put it as what's the name? As an info on my tracing, because this usually is mostly informational, because the error, the protocol has to respect it, and they have to send back MCP errors, JSON RPC error with that channel, because otherwise it's stuff. So the aux, the STD error will always be kind of for messages, because it cannot really be for error. That will be the wrong place. So in this context, those are used for error. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say, and I like this, and it took me a little while to think about this naming, so hopefully it's going to work nicely. S2C, yeah? Okay. I need to think about it. Yeah, okay. So this is, I'm sorry. So this is, my naming convention should be mechanical, because if we have to think too much, then it is bad. So S2C, the server to client, okay? That will be the aux, which is auxiliary, yeah? And that will be the RX. I don't have to think about it. My naming convention should be pretty obvious. And that will be, again, it will be the other guy, which will be the S2C, server to client, aux, and that is going to be the TX. So far, so good. Now we're going to do those guys. No, that's not fair. Oh, that's scary. Something didn't get renamed. I did a wrong rename somehow. Okay. Oh. Okay, that's fair enough. Okay, that's fine. So I'm going to do those are simpler enough here. So we're going to do that. Now I should compile. That should run nicely. And then we're going to go back to this guy. I'm going to close that. I don't know what this one it is. Going back there. And then we're going to do again. So F2. So now I press save to make sure everything compile. And then I press F2 and I'm going to say, this is the client to server request TX. Okay. Press save. Everything should be fine. So I think I didn't do a S2 and then I was in La La Land. Then this one is going to be a server to client response Rx. Okay, now this should be good. Now I'm going to do that guy, and that is going to be F2, and I'm going to do this is in. So that has to be the other guy. Which is server to client. Request Rx. That should be this one, which is going to be server. Oh, I messed up the other one. I'm going to fix it. Server to client. Res tx. And then this one. Okay. So now that should be good. And then to answer your question here, that is this guy, which is server to client, aux Rx, server to client, and then we're going to do aux tx. Okay, so this is a pattern I came for that needs again, because again, it's super important to have our right message base to implement this agentic library, because you don't want to tie, obviously, the protocol to the client over there. It will create a mess. Yeah, because you can have multiple protocols. They're not even the same channel. We're going to look at some of the flow here of STDIO and streamable HTTP and stuff. They're quite different. So you want to have this, such as you have full parallelism and all of that. So that is pretty cool now. So now we have those guys, and I'm pretty happy about this. So git log, and this is because everything works and everything good. Typically, when I don't do the tilde is work in progress, I don't commit it, but here I'm early enough, and because I do the live, I commit them. But on this one is more kind of minor refactor, comes T-Rex renaming. And I'm going to commit that because I want to make sure that if I do error, I can do a git restore. So I like to have these like checkpoints that are meaningful, but then I can do a git restore. Yeah? So that is a little bit the thing that I like to do. So now that we have that, the way it works all the time is I use Flume. I like Flume a lot for MPC, the channel thing. And the reason why is because it's efficient and everything, but it's also because Flume supports sync and async in the same event. So the same TX or whatever, you can say an await, you have an async underscore async to do a wait, or you can just blocking wait. And this is super convenient because otherwise, if you have one and you try to use one in the other, in some cases, then it gets tricky. Yeah. So that's why, I like Flume, but sometimes I use Tokyo as well, or the standard. Or if you are comfortable with Crossbeam, it doesn't really matter. As long as you are using the channel, you can change them pretty easily. And then this is where I create all of those pairs, and then I put them there. So in fact, here, if I were going to be brave here, I would change that as well. Should I change that? Yeah, I'm going to change that, and I think I can change that. I can actually. So I like to have done the thing, so I'm going to do a Shift Command L to get all of those guys, and then I'm going to do and then I'm going to be a dumb here. I'm going to copy that without thinking. C2S, rec, TX. Press save, and then I'm going to do the same thing here. S2C, res, Rx. Save, and then I don't know why I have RSS there. That was interesting. Why do I have RSS? I don't know why I have that back in the days. and then this guy. And in fact, I'm going to get probably, I'm going to take the RSS here, which was a weird one, and S2C, ox, underscore, press save. I'm not sure if I should have done that, but C2S, rec, rx. And then I'm going to do this one, Shift Command L, S2C, res, tx. Okay, compile, works. This is not really a test. Usually I will have a unit test, but right now we're still building up. So my example, I'm using my example as a test. And then I'm pretty happy here. I'm not going to make a new commit. I could git log for muscle memory to make sure I don't amend on something I should not amend to, because otherwise it's a pain. So here quickly, I'm checking that this guy is not origin, because you don't want to force push. It's painful to people. Sometimes I do it. If it causes you trouble, feel free to yell at me back. I will stop doing it. I do it for small libs, and then when it's very short and I did a silly typo, I'm trying to collapse them, but if it's only within a couple of minutes. But here I don't need it, so this one is perfect, and I'm going to do a git amend. Now, to be honest, that is where AI can be that is one of the places where AI could be very cool. What I will do here, and I don't want to bug people too much with that, but what I will do is I will copy these things here. I will give it to AI and say, hey, and I will give all of these files. So I have these things here, which is my AI pack procoder. So you can check AI pack and then stuff. And then here I will give all of these files somewhere, the client here, probably I will do something like that. And then I will say, I will use that, or I will use Flash. So Flash is Flash 2.5 for me. It's an alias to that. And I say, hey, can you make sure that we're not using SCDIO anymore, but the correct one? So I will do that. So this way, all my code will be things, because in the function, I was using the same one. But for now, I don't want to bug you guys with that, except if you want to see the demo. Hey, Dan. So that is pretty cool. So now what we did, and so the reason why I did this cleanup now is, again, when we are going to have this protocol, we want to have all of these channels. And they might look over designed, but I think in this particular domain, in a way, we want all of these things. And it might look over designed, but in this particular domain is actually very important, because then we have different things running on stuff. And so we're going to see here that, for example, in my transport, so yeah, this is pretty good. So right now we're going to use the sampling in the SCDIO transport. So the transport works like that. So let me, for that, it has a client transport. We get the config. Inside the config, we have the CMD, the argument, and the current dir, because that sometimes is useful. Then what we have is we have the client transport, and I put them in inner right now, because, oh yeah, this is when it's connected. And then I have the SCDO handles. And I allow on use those is to make sure that they are still in memory, such as they don't get dropped, because if they get dropped, then the process or child process, whatever, get terminated, and then it's a pain. So you want to keep those. That is a way I found it. And then we have the start. And inside the start, this is where you see in the start, I get the transport T-Rex. And so I have those guys here. Yeah? So now you're going to tell me to say, hey, so let's change that. So we're going to do okay, there's a chat here in the thing, in the live. So sorry, maybe silly question. How do you integrate MCP to docs.rs? Because I'm sometimes hallucinating. Yeah. This is a good question. Oh, but he left. He has a question. It's my fault. I was slow to answer on this one. Yes. This is going to be a topic for another live. I'm not sure I want to get there. And it's going to be... so the way I'm planning to do that, and the way I do that is I have an agent, a custom agent API that summarize a library, like my own libraries or whatever, into a one markdown file, and then I add it into the prompt. So that is the way I do it. Yeah. So sorry for the late answer here. So it's not, it could be an MCP and eventually it will become an MCP. But first you want to do the meat of it, and there's a good flow of doing these kind of things. I have a video on AI Pack about agentic knowledge optimization. And so that is a part of the thing here. Okay, so now that we have this, we are going to rename as well. So I'm going to rename this one C2S rec RX. And then, so you have to do that, otherwise the thing won't get. So this one is S2C res TX. And then is going to be S2C ox TX. So they all match very well. And I think this one, git log, and we're still on this git amen. That is an alias that I have. So now this kind of get merged back there. And what I'm going to do now is we're going to see how it works. So again, the protocol here of the MCP is you have this transport layer, which is in our agentic. That is our code that we are saying here. So that is a start. And it's going to communicate with our MCP server. And this one is the std.io protocol. So that is what we have. And so in a way here, what I'm doing is to say, hey, I'm taking all of this std in and std out, and then I'm making them into the child process. So with std.io, we have these different channels. And then, so this one is the error, which is the aux. So it should be the aux, and then you can see here, this is exactly that. You see? That one. And this one is the important one. This is where the magic happens. So it might look boring, but this is where we are looping through the reader of child stdr, which is what we want. And then for each one of them, we are each line, because that is the way the spec works. I mean, not for stdr, but we're going to assume that that is the way it works also for that channel, is we are sending it to that channel, which then the client will have a loop on for it. Yeah, so that is the way it works. And so this one is a little bit on the thing. And by the way, anybody here that want to join, you have the thing here, the link over there. Yeah, so you have the MS team if you want to join and ask questions. And now I'm better at showing the question. Otherwise, you can also have you unmute your mic and have a question. So that is what we're doing. We have the transport and all of that, and then we have this one. So now it's clear. It's a little bit more complicated to read when we're on a particular protocol. But the thing here is that now what we have is we have the start, and this is what we're doing. Well, so we're listening to the std.out. This one we don't really care. But the std.out, this is what the server is sending us back. Yeah? So that is what is sending us back. And in the concept of std.io protocol, you only have a channel, one channel back to answer to get the answer back. There's not notion of sessions. So we get the line, and by the protocol, it's every time the line. So we get the std.out handler, the buffer reader of child std.out, and then we read the lines, because that is the way it works. Now, for each line here, we parse it, and what do we do? Oh, yeah. And so now, when this one is okay, we are sending it to our res over there. Interesting. So we do a server to client underscore response tx, and then we send the event over there. And that is because our transport doesn't know right now, the design is that the transport doesn't know the content, the purpose of this guy. And so the Rx of this is managed by the client transport. Okay, so that is where the Rx is. So if we go to the client, so if we go, we're going to do a search here. And so that is a comms here, that is transport, and that is a client. Okay, so this is where the client is getting the Rx. And then this one, we're going to rename that S2C res Rx. That is where I should have asked the AI to do it, but rec tx. And then S2C okay. So now in the S2C, so when we respond the server here, we're going to get the server, and then we have this run things. And then we're going to rename it as well, S2C res Rx. And then we're going to say S2C aux Rx. Okay, so that is where the thing kind of run all the time. So that is going to be interesting because that is where, so if I go back there, this is where we are getting the message. Yeah, so that is pretty good. So this one is going to be actually the S2C res Rx. In fact, in my design here, I might have something wrong. And I'm going to show you why. It's funny, yeah. So that is what I do often is I design and I clarify the names. And the names tell me a little bit what they are, yeah? And here I'm going to tell you why it's a little bit confusing here, the naming. And the reason is because, and I'm going to go back here. Okay, well, that's fine. And then the other one is, let's see, okay. So the hawks, we don't care. So we care about this guy. So now on this one, what we're going to do is we're going to say that, so we are getting the message and we are parsing it. Yes, so this is what's happening. Yeah, the transport is reading from the buffer reader, and you say, okay, I'm going to send something to the res. So this is what I read there, and I'm going to send it as a response, as a message. And then here we're going to parse it as an MCP message. So we have a parser, and the MCP message is our guy, and we know if it's a request, a notification, a response, or something like that. Now, here's the thing here where my naming needs to be rethought a little bit, because what we're getting, the responsibility of the transport, that's my current design. I might change the design later, but the code design of the transport is, I don't know what you are sending me. What I know is a transport protocol, which is, for that protocol, the JSON RPC is in a single line. And then I do a new line, and every new line is a new JSON RPC. Now, because there's only one channel of communications, that channel actually has a client and a response. So I'm going to go here, git log, git up, press save to make sure everything compiles and everything. I should have that there. So I have a cargo watch example here, and then this one I go and get a man. Okay. Now, this here is the one that knows what's going on. So this one doesn't know. It gets a string, and then it sends a string. Doesn't know if it's a request or a response. The client gets the string today. And again, I might change the design, yeah? But get the string, which is a message. And then, so that is the message is a string. Get the message of the thing, and then it pass it as an MCP message, which is our type. And then it do a match. If it's a response, which is what we have, is go to process, and here we're processing the response. So we're looking at the ID, which we have in the concurrent hash map and everything. Then if it's not a response, then what it does if it's not a response, it's a request. And then if it does a request here, today we probably don't have the thing. So if param false, we continue because we are assuming here, which is not really a good assumption, that if there's no params, there's nothing to do, which is not, but in the context of sampling is okay, because we know that we have params. And here we must have a param. And then we are parsing this guy over there, which is we are taking the sampling. So what we are happening here is we are taking the sampling request. So I'm using the let else design in this case. I'm saying, hey, if there is no, I continue the loop. Otherwise, I'm trying to parse it as JSON. And today, if it fails, I don't say anything. I should have an error here saying it fails, and probably do a match to be able to have the error. So that is one thing. And then after I do the OK sampling request params, which this is what I want. And then I have these things where I'm recreating the MCP request. And then it's the to-do. What do I do with this guy? So now it's interesting, yes, because what we did, we didn't break, well, this stuff is interesting because what we did, can we save here? If I save, what did I change? I don't think I changed much. Did I change anything? Yeah. If I go into my communication here, this is the things, but in fact, it's not really true, yeah? What we had in the transport, when we sent the thing S2C res, we didn't know if it was a res or if it was a TX, actually, or a request. Yeah? So the funny thing here is, in a way, the transport, because I do not parse the things at the transport level, and that is the current design. Yeah? The guy, this one here, the transport doesn't know if it's a S2C response or if it's a S2C request. So that was the way I was like trying to do it, yeah, but is not true. Yeah? So in fact, the naming that I should do is, so I'm going back to the client implementation and we're going to see what happened when is a response. So this one works very nicely. So we go to the response and then we do the process response. And then in this case, we do a one-shot send to that guy. So what's happening here is we have a dynamic hash map. We're using dash map, which is awesome. We take the dynamic hash map and then we are looking for the ID because in JSON RPC, you have IDs for all of your comments. Yeah? So if we go back there, the JSON RPC, I'm going to, I think I have it there. Okay. JSON RPC has this ID over there. And this ID is basically guaranteed to come back like that. So this is what we have over there. Yeah, we have these things over there where we are getting we are removing from our queue, which is a hash map. And then if we have the ID over there, so that will give us the RPC ID, and then the sender, which is a one-shot, and then we are sending the response. And this is very cool. This is a way that we're having the feeling of doing a request response on the API while everything is asynchronous on the behalf. So that is pretty nice. So now what we need is to probably have another queue we're going to do that. Okay, what time is it? Stuff we have now, we can do that. So what I will do is I will continue this design saying that transport doesn't know payloads, just know how to do the things and then send it. So in fact, here I will rename the transport variable because now they're a little bit off. Yeah. So the thing I will do here is I will go back. So we'll rename it, but I will go there and I will probably have a queue. And I will do that. I will do comes inner with queue. So perhaps I can have something. So that is a response queue. Okay. And so the res queue here is a type and it's arc. It's this guy. This is the MCP. This is the dash map. Yeah. Okay, so this is what it is. In fact, what I might do here, I'm thinking. So what I want is today, what I'm going to want here, this is what I want to do, is in my client implementation, when I'm going to loop through this guy, so one thing I like about Rust is this kind of things here where I have this different, so I have code blocks, implementation block, and then I split them into what I want to have. Yeah, so if I do the run something, I should be there. Let's go. Yeah, let's go. Yeah. So again, here's the thing here, which is I don't like it. It's more like I want in a way to just have S2C, server to client. And at this stage, I don't know if it's a response or a thing. It's when I'm going to run it and I run through it, that is where I take the string, and this is where I know if it's a response, a request, and the notifications. And so in a way here, the communication between the transport and the things, I'm going to keep it much simpler. And that is a way, when I do design, it's very important to not get emotional. And moreover, here is live, so it's even worse because I'm showing that my first take was a wrong one and everything. And people say, wow, we're here to have wrong take and good takes and stuff. But that's the way, yeah? So I have two choices, yeah? One, I can say, well, I want my transport business to know when it talks, to know if it's if the payload, to know the payload, if it's a request, if it's a response and everything. Or I want my transport protocol to not know anything about the payload. So that is the current thing right now. It's just to say, what is send stuff? And it's the client today that knows this kind of distinction. So I'm going to stick to my guns in a way, this one. And the nice thing is when we're going to implement back this sampling business, into the HTTP protocol transport, then it's going to validate again, yeah, or might be unvalidate this approach. So the code design here that I'm going to choose is going to say, well, you know, at the beginning, you thought that this communication business, you are going to know, because in fact, in my head, I wanted to say, hey, now I'm going to have the other way. Yeah, so these guys will have had another pair of pairs. Yeah? And that will have been the opposite. But in fact, I'm not going to do that. In fact, what I'm going to do is, and here's what I can do. What I have here, what did I do? Yeah, I'm going to amend this one. This one is fine. So here I'm going to go a git log. And I'm happy with this one, so I want to rename that. And then I'm going to do a git amend. So when I do change, and moreover, this one I'm going to change is going to be a little bit a brutal one. So I want to be cautious to have things such as I can do my git restore. So that is the way I know. So I do a command shift enter to pin it. And then I'm going to do, so this one I'm not going to do things, because remember we kind of changed the name as well, and I don't want to do. So I'm going to do actually okay. So I'm going to do, and this one is unique enough. Yeah. So I'm going to do a search replace. Checking that. I'm going to do command F, and that is going to search and replace everything. And I'm going to do a C2S TX. Because now what we're going to say, well, that channel, the TXRX, is just the channel about receiving content and sending back content. That's it. And it's not something that will know the payload. The client guy will know the payload. So then after, we are going to implement probably another kind of things, which is going to have another queue to do the payload business. Yeah? To know what to do when it's a request or not a request and so on. So I'm going to do command option enter, I guess. And then boom. I'm going to do a command shift thing. So that will take this one. I'm going to do the same thing here. C, RX. Okay. This guy, I'm going to keep this guy actually, because that is aux, and auxiliary is something else. That is a protocol. That is the STD air for the STD-IO protocol. Might be very specific to STD-IO or things that has a back channel, but is a useless back channel. It's kind of an info one, you know. And so now I'm going to do the same thing over there, making sure to not mess up the name, because then after I'm in big trouble. C2S, and I'm going to do RX. Okay, so that is the symmetry of the other guy on top, and then command F, and I do a full search and replace because we already kind of did some changes over there. So okay, so now this is thing. So now this is good, yeah. The comms TRX protocol doesn't know about the body. This is the current design. I can change that as long as you have a good story of your design that you repeat all the time in your head to change it, to validate it. And then when you want to change it, make a branch, you change it. And if you are much happier with the change, stick with the change. So that is the thing. And that often is one thing that, and I use AI a lot for coding, no hard feeling about using AI as much as we can. But this is where sometimes AI, they will go to one route and they will double, triple down all the time. And so this is where I think AI bringing us almost infinite knowledge, kind of, but it's great to have expertise as well. And so that is what we are bringing here. So now we have this. I'm going to go there and press save. This should run pretty nicely. And now we have that. Okay, so this is good. This is a little our hack business, but that's fine. So going back on this one, and I'm going to go git amend. Okay, so now again, the story here compared to before is to say, well, This is a client to server stuff, client and server to client RX. Yeah, so this is a two kind of things that we have. Now, what we're going to do is to say we still have a problem here. I'm designing live, yes, so it's not like I had a plan. Those sessions are unscripted. I mean, they have a topic, they have a goal, but you know, I didn't pre-design it. So now what we want is to say, okay, when is a process? We have the queue over there. The kind of queue is not really a queue, but we have this guy which holds a one shot. Yeah? So if you look at the client implementation, so that is a connect. But if you look at the communication, I think, yeah, send request. Okay. So the send request here is going to put, oh, it's using send request row, I think. Send request row, yeah? It's sending this one. And then I have the send request rows that I leave public for now, but will probably be a pub crate at some point. And then in this guy, this is where we are doing the one shot. Yeah, so I'm creating a one shot of Tokyo, this guy. And then I have the IDs that I can clone and it respects everything because it's number and everything. And then I insert it into the rescue. So that is a way that you find out the response. And so when we call that, that is a beautiful thing, yeah? It's going to wait until this guy is answering. So that is pretty nice. Okay. So that is a way that this one works. And this is, yeah, so here I just wrapped it in a way. And then I send it to the trans in GX. Yeah, so that is the way that things get sent there. So now what we want, in a way, is I'm going to go back to my client implementation. And what we want is, I think it's going to be something symmetry on the queue. And right now, and I think over there, what I have is ComTRX and I have a type. So often what I like to do is I like to wrap the type, here's Flume, into my own type. Because this way I can do import into string and then I can get fancier over time. So this is what I like to do. And so, and then obviously, how do I create those guys? This is a question. New TRX pairs. Okay, I'm going to search that. I should have, oh, I have the into here. Sorry about that. And so the into, so yeah, I have the from. So rather to have a constructor, I decided on this one to have into, which is fine. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm thinking here. I think what I'm going to do, client, so that is a communication inner. I could put it here, but I'm going to put it here in a way for now. And what I want is in, I'm not going to say, we're going to do the server. So we're going to go back to our notation here, server to client. So this one is a request. We know it's a request and it's going to be an MCP guy. And then we're going to do a CP, and that will be a TX. And then where do we do the run? New client, info, self, and in the connect. Okay, so this is where we do it. Always tricky here. So what we're going to do is trying to understand where do I create that. Because the in is going to become so what I need, I'm going to explain why I'm doing this stuff. What I need, and I'm going to do at the beginning, I'm going to do it simple. So what I need here is when I do the connect, this is where I start the loop, I think. This. Yeah. So this is where, so I start the client T-Rex and stuff, and then I do the run. Okay. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do another one here. So this is a run for the server to client RX. And that is a run for the server to client Ox, yeah, which is not really, needed. And then that git log, git mn. So that is the stuff. And then now we're going to do, I'm trying to think here, self run. And right now I'm going to do this is silly, yeah, but from server. So that is server to client response. I'm going to make it something. Sampling. I'm going to make something a little bit more explicit. Sampling requests. Okay. And then here, I need to pass an RX. So that is the way it's going to do this thing. The reason here where I'm mixed on this one is because those two here are getting the transport messages. Yeah, run the transport message. This one is going to get the result of this. Yeah, this is going to run. I'm going to say, hey, the response or is request, and if it's a request, it's going to send it there. So this is the thing. So I'm going to put it like that. Messages. Then I'm going to say this is run. I'm going to do height. MCP request. Okay, so now that this guy is going to do the things and is going to send it in this new queue now that is going to do that. Okay, so this is a way. So that is going to be send a request, and then this guy is going to be the things. And so in this guy, this is where we need, and we don't run server request. Yeah, we can do that. And that will be, I think, the server MCP request RX. So I'm going to make super explicit, like for now. And then we'll see. So I don't need to narrow it down to sampling. I'm going to make it relatively simple like that. So that is an Rx. Now, the thing with Rx is that you cannot clone it usually, except if it's broadcast. And that is by design. It's a good thing. So this means that whatever we're going to create up there, this is what we're going to get here. So that is the thing. So obviously that function doesn't exist and that doesn't exist. Now what we need is to create those guys, and we're going to do it in line right now, just to simplify the model. So I'm going to go to my comps over there, and I'm going to do that. Can we do that? And that will create the thing. So that will be good. And then later I can make something fancier. And then I'm going to say, well, we can be nice here. We're going to do S2C, yeah, MCP request. And that will be the Rx, and that will be the TX. Okay. So that should compile. Now the type, and then in our run, so we're going to go back here. Handlers, so that is a handlers. This is a communication, which is, where's the run guys? The runners are here. Okay. So that run server to client, that run the Hawks business, STDR, when there is one. So this one, the two important one is going to be the first one here, server to staff. And then I'm going to fn run. And I'm sorry here, I'm like being silly. I think, can I do something like that? Oh. Okay, I'm going to go back up. And this run server request. Yeah, that's good. Okay. And now I'm going to have MCP things over there, but in fact, I'm going to make a type. Well, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to say, yeah, that's fine. MCP request. Can I do that? Yeah, it doesn't complain. So we're going to do that. And I don't like that much because, you know, it's a long time. I would probably create a wrapper or type alias, but right now I want to see that things compiles. And then I'm going to do S2C MCP request Rx to be super explicit. And this is where this guy will be a Flume receiver, something like that. Hopefully it's not too confusing here with there's a thin line here. So I'm going to do to do over there, press save. Does it compile? Yes. Does this guy compile? No, because why it doesn't compile? No method names. Okay, that is weird. No method names ever found in mutable. Oh, this guy. Oh, yeah. Okay, silly. Sorry about that for the one stuff. So that compiles. So it was a good first steps in thing. So now this guy is going to compile, and then the question is, what do we do with that guy? Okay. So that guy, for now, what we're going to do, okay, so that is what we did. Yeah? We created a MPC response. We have this guy here now that we need to give somewhere. So this one is going to go there. And because we are going to have our spawn, is going to go on and on, and so we're going to be fine. Yeah? And so then the name over there is going to be run server request. Well, we're not going to implement that for now. Yeah. So we don't have to do that. So that means that this guy will get dropped, and then when we're going to try to send an event, it's going to complain, which is going to be good. And so now we need to store that somewhere. So let me see if I can do that like that. So this guy here needs to be stored somewhere. So this one, when that is going to be implemented, that will run and will keep this one live. This one needs to be kept somewhere. And if you have 0tx, I think, the whole thing gets dropped, I think. But if you have 0rx, it definitely get dropped. So you always need to keep a tx anyway, because if you lost your tx, you cannot send it anymore. And I do think that some MCP kind of MSPC, MP, whatever, SC, drop down if you lose the TX. So now this guy, actually I'm probably trying to keep it there. This guy, we need to go back up, and we are going to try to put it. The question is, where do we want to put it? So at the beginning here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do ugly like that. And I'm going to do a Flume. So the type here with Flume and bounded. I'm going to do that. No. That's silly. Sorry about that. Sender. Okay. So now we have the sender over there. So we created an unbounded one. This one has a sender. So this one is kept there. So that's nice. It's an option because we don't know if we're going to do that. And then that we're going to keep this one. So we're going to keep it there. We're going to do this S2C equal sum this guy. Does it work? This, oh my God, back to my Java days. That is old. So that should work pretty good there. And that is pretty good. So now there's one compile error, which is always a little bit worrisome here, which is there. Okay, sorry. Yeah, that's fair. And then this will be fill this stuff, and then we want to have a none. Okay. I'm going to remove the whole split. It might be too confusing. So press save, and that is starting to work pretty nicely now. Starting to work nicely. I love that. So now, so that is what we created. Yeah, we created this guy in the self and stuff. So we're going to follow the same pattern that I followed when I have a try business. Yeah, I have a try in TX here. And I like that because like this, it takes care of I have one place to change it. So we're going to follow exactly the same pattern. So try because it can fail, try. That is a long name, but that's fine. TX. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, okay. Let's see if Copilot can do that. It can do that. Not too bad. Well, got confused here. Let TX. Yeah. And then it should return OK of TX. Okay, fair enough. I'm being why? Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry. Question mark. Yeah. Good. Yeah, so here we're doing self. We're taking our guy here, which is an option. We're saying as ref because we want to have a reference. We don't need to own it. I mean, we can clone it, but I don't think it's needed. And you do a OKR and then things. And if we need to clone it, we might need to clone it actually, but we'll see. Okay. So that is one thing that we're doing. So now that we have this, remember when we did our run, we did our run Rx. So that is, we get all of the transport things, and that is where we have this if else, yeah? I mean the match. So in this match response, we have these things here, which we are doing the process MCP response, where we can stuff. And then here is like, hey, we're not getting a response because we pass it there. We're getting a request. So now what we want is to say that, so I'm using the latest, I'm repeating the story in my head. I'm doing the from here, so I know exactly what I have. I'm recreating the MCP request. Okay, so that is good. And then I should be able to and I might have to do a clone actually, we'll see. Because here I don't think I can do self over there. Okay, so I'm going to do that. So I want to move inside this closure. I want to move the thing. Yes, so I'm going to say, let this guy self that clone. And that. Sorry. Oh, yeah, my God. Should mark that. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're taking the sender. Our senders are made to be cloned, so we don't hurt. But the cool thing here is that will do a try, and if it's option none, it will complain, and otherwise it does an option of ref. The nice thing about doing an option of ref, and here it's macro optimization, is a little bit silly, but good practice, doesn't hurt, is this function didn't clone it. So if I could pass it as a reference, as self and stuff, everything will be happy. But here, I cannot call self something because it will say, hey, self might not live, you are spawning something here. So this guy has to be live longer than client. So I cannot do self. So what I can move into its own value. This is why we do the clone. And this is why channel stuff is amazing. So now we have the TX over there because we have the async move that will get moved there. And now we should be able to do something like that. Send async, like the async. And we're going to do that one. It might complain a little bit here. Yep. No, but everything is going to be good. Okay. I'm going to go for the one that stayed here. It's interesting. So in my code design, when I was designing it like, oh, create message. Here we know is a request. Yeah, so this is MCP request is MCP request. I'm happy about this. And then, because we were experimenting with stuff, it say, hey, you know, if it's, I don't know what's happening. Yeah, we were force feeding it into a sampling request. Okay, this part of the client function. And then after we were like creating the MCP request with a create message parent. Could have been good, but here our MCP request, remember before I was almost sampling and then I changed it to request. I don't want to bind it to sampling only. So we're going only to support sampling. If the server sends us something else, we're going to throw an error, but I don't want that function to know about it. Yeah, so that is a little bit the code design behind it. So the thing I'm going to do now is going to say, hey, try S to C MCP request transaction. And I'm going to send that, but the item here that I want to send, so I've sent, and I'm going to do a wait. I'm going to do a match here because I don't want I want to handle the errors. I don't want it to fail. So I'm going to do that. Okay. Then I think that will return nothing. Okay. That will return nothing. And then this one here, we're going to say, when you send, all the time, my recommendation is always do that. Take the cost you're doing that, this, you know, things. But this is important because otherwise you don't know why things doesn't work and it's get very tricky. And you can, you know, you can do it in a very lazy way. It doesn't matter. I think that will work nicely. Okay. Now, the item here, this is where we've done a little bit too much here. We did this kind of things. We have the pretty because we wanted to display pretty, which is fine. We're going to keep that, yeah. And then what we're going to do, so we print that. We're going to do one print, my debug thing, and pretty. So that is a way. So I'm doing a debug print here of this guy. And then I have this, which I don't want. I want to do now. Do I want to do that? No, I do not want to do that because some JSON RPC requests are valid when they don't have any body. So at this point, I don't want to go over my pay grade. This function pay grade is, I get a thing I know is an MCP request, but I don't know the content. In fact, if you look at MCP request, by default, it's value. Yeah? And it's by design, because I want each layer to be responsible of their own stuff. So this one is not responsible of doing, you know, the validation. So now that is what I changed compared to before. So now I'm going to comment that. And then I'm going to comment that as well, because I don't want to do that here. And I'm going to take the MCP request, and I think I should be able to send it here. Oh, cool. Box. Good. In Rust, when things compile, is already pretty good. So, and this is a good thing. People see that as a bad thing. I see that as an amazing stuff. I wouldn't do concurrencies the way I do it in C, C++. No way. And even in Java, you can hang yourself. Sometimes you might think that string builder or string buffer or whatever is concurrency safe, and then stuff. Now, this is part of an interview question. So if you got the job, you probably know which one to use. But this kind of tricky stuff in Java, like back in the days, I don't know if it's still true, but long time ago when I was doing quite a bit of Java, string formatter, you create a formatter, a date formatter, you create a date formatter, you will think that is thread safe once you created the beast. And no, it's not. It maintains state somehow. And so this is where Rust is magic, because we can do this very advanced stuff without having 15 years of C++, and we are C++ fast. Or C++. So that is pretty cool. It's sending the things over there. And this is pretty cool. This is actually beautiful, because now what we're going to do is we're going to keep this guy here, but we're going to go through our, this is a run tx, yeah, it's pretty good. And now, hey, just below, we're going to do something like that, where, so the run here, we're going to follow this pattern, yes? So I'm going to follow the, this guy is it's the same one there, same pattern, Tokyo's one. So now, what I'm going to do is the same thing, Tokyo, spawn, and then async, move, because we want to move that guy inside this guy. We're going to do a loop. It will be an infinite loop. And then we're going to do this guy here. And so it's going to be, except that here, well, I don't know if that is a good idea, but it's just me, but now it's getting strange. So, hey, Judge John, which library are you using for MCP? Good question here. I am using, and by the way, guys, there is a little delay of YouTube when you send a message. So for the ones that are not used to YouTube, there's a delay, even if I check no delay or whatever. And then sometime also I have a delay as well. But this is a great question, and I am using, this is a perfect question, and I am using Flume, this guy, the Flume, this crate. And one of the reasons is, they say it's efficient, but honestly, Rust is so efficient that when we're in our stuff, it's fine. We don't have to if it's a popular one, usually it's good quality. It's not true in every languages, but in Rust, usually because of the community and stuff, if something is relatively popular, is good. So, Crossbeam is good, Tokyo is good. The thing I love about Flume, which is a game changer for me, is that they support sync and async in the same thing. This is heaven. And so that is a joke. I mean, that's my joke, kind of joke. Yeah, it's not very good humor, but I like to reverse. I like to have the default being async. So usually when I wrap the Flume, this is a Flume guy. And so this is Flume. I wrap it because I like to have receive as the async, and they have receive async as the async, which you could say, well, it's silly because now, since here I'm like in the raw stuff, I'm going to have to do match this guy. So hopefully I answer your question here, but that was a good one. And then I can do a receive, async or sync. And this is magical. It looks silly, but when sometimes you want to be able to, you need one in the other, and it's a pain all the time, either way. So the fact that they solved that natively, and I'm sure they did it the right way, make it a whole different thing. So I'm going to do a wait. And here we do want to have a wait. We don't want to block the thread, obviously. So we want to play into this whole async business. Yeah. So now that we have this, we're going to have two guys. So one thing again, so it's a couple of best practices for me. I have the greatest respect for Flume. I don't think I will have, I don't know if I could have done a better job. This is awesome. The only thing I don't like, which is a very minor thing, which is not a criticism of the developer at all, is unwrap. I don't think we should use unwrap even in examples. Yeah, we should do a star result boxed in error, and that should be a question mark. Because once you have question mark and you avoid unwrap, so when you have unwrap or something, that's great. But when you only have unwrap, this crashes the whole thing, and then good luck to spinning. And it's very easy, yeah, because you copy code that way. And when you are in an event-based business, can get very tricky, because then you can spend an hour or 2 hours finding something just because you didn't trace or at least println something. Yeah. So that's why on this guy, every time I send event, I've learned the hard way to say, hey, we're going to do the OK. And that will be the MCP request, I think. Yeah. So that should be this one. Beautiful. We're going to do to-do. Whatever. And then we're going to do the air. And then that is where that is super important to do. Even if it's a println, if you don't have tracing, println is completely fine. This one is info because, again, this one is info because sometimes aux rx stdio error. Nope, not needed. Yeah, which is, yeah, I'm not going to put that because when it is stdio, it's not going to get dropped. So now it's going to get confusing. But this is a step. But here, what we want is we want to have an error. This is a big error here because I don't know why, and that will happen actually to us because we dropped the guy, I think. And so when we're going to try to send, it might be dropped. Oh, no. I don't know what I think about that. Okay, so very good question for the one that listen. I read on Flume GitHub, and it say it's in casual maintenance mode, so heavy feature development has dropped. What do you think about that? So 2 things. That is unfortunate because I'm the biggest fan of Flume. Second, I do think that Flume is still robust in our case, so I'm not planning to move out for now. I think it's robust enough. It's kind of sad. This means that they are not adding new features, but I don't think that, I mean, Flume is used by, if you go to Flume here, it's 71 million, 14 million is fine. Yeah, and the last release was 8 months ago. So my assumption thanks a lot for bringing to my attention, I didn't know. My assumption of that is mature. This means that it's kind of a feature freeze kind of business, which is fine. The feature it has what I needed. And then if somehow we need to move out, if the trend is to move out, since I'm wrapping the stuff usually, and even if it's not wrapped, the cost of changing is not that big. The only trick, and my experience was, again, when you have some time, it's not often, yeah. Like for example, in this case, I could use Tokyo and channel stuff. It will work completely fine. So in this crate, I don't think I have a use case of using sync in async or async in sync function. So I think I'm safe. In AI Pack, where the stuff is run with Lua and everything, sometimes there's no way for me to be in the async context. So I have to either create a workaround one, but the fact that Flume support both is kind of heaven. And so then after I would just spend more time of trying to find a pattern of using async, in sync, and so on, and then we'll try to find a good way, the good pattern to use Tokyo async in a sync context. But those stuff get nasty quickly. So that's hopefully answer the question, but a good one here. I think Flume is robust enough. The fact that they are on feature freeze is okay, yeah, but something to watch out for. That's good. So now the thing I will do on this guy, yeah, so this is complaining because he's saying, hey, you're like And this should be something like that, I think. And so now on this guy here, so that's pretty cool. You know, we get our Flume guy. Typically that, and that goes back to your point, Erland, I will wrap it to my own type anyway. Right now, I'm just making sure that everything gets wired correctly, but typically these kind of things, I would wrap it in my own type, and then I can swap, you know, relatively easy with the other ones. And so I'm going to do that. This one is to do. This one is an error, so that will be cannot Rx from. And here it doesn't have to be. Don't. It's better to say anything. I mean, obviously, I don't worry too much about broken English, but even if it's not really clean or consistent with the rest, do or println is completely fine. Just do something there, such as you can do copy paste, Control Shift search F, and then you find it, and then you can solve the problem. That's the only thing you want to do. That saves so much time. Yeah. And then after we can be dogmatic later. And so this one here is where we have our MCP request now. Yeah, so that is where we're going to do the thing, and we are going to actually, well, I'm too impatient, so I'm going to save this guy. I have the run request, which is sending. We have the run staff over there. So this one run first, okay? And then it will pretty JSON here just to print there. And in fact, I'm going to put that. So for me, it's very important that, because that is what I search before commit, and then I remove them. And so that's my way. This I commented out, such as if I want to use it there, and then the stuff. This one was a pseudocode that I was doing. Then I'm going to remove that, I guess. Okay. And then look at I have even the cargo watch. Oh, that is, so what I do usually, that client not connected. No. Okay, that's interesting. That's pretty cool, actually. So that works. Okay, so this means that no. Oh. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, this is good. So it's working. So we are hitting this guy because we do not have the self there, which makes sense because when we connect, that's fine. We're going to solve that very nicely, I think. I'm trying to browse not too fast. So that is this one. We don't care, the communication. We're going to go back to the connect. Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting, actually. So probably we don't even need to store it there. I'm going to show why. So this is a connect. This is where we connect the guy. We create our big TRX here, guys, for the transport and the client. So we send that to the client, and then we store some of the stuff, and then we run it. We run the stuff. Yeah, so that we run the server to client things, and then we are running our MCP request. Then I was all happy because okay, I forgot. Yeah, I was all happy because I did that. So I did that. So why does he complain then? That's funny. That's funny. Okay, so I'm going to go back there. No client connected. Client not connected. Run server stuff. Okay, thanks. I'm gonna have to implement MCP in my Rust server, but I think model controller Rust SDK will be more up to date. What do you mean the model context protocol Rust MCP? I don't know what is that. But I think the model context protocol Rust SDK. Oh, they have a Rust SDK? I didn't even try that. Oh, okay. The official. Oh, that's funny. No, I will keep an eye on that. I will keep an eye on that. It's definitely, you have more people and stuff for 37. That is quite a bit. So I'm going to keep an eye on that, but I'm going to keep my stuff also running from now, the agentic, because it has A2A and stuff. So I will look at that. Pretty happy with, I'm pretty close. So I'm not going to throw away the things. I'm looking at the stuff right now. Yeah, might be interesting. Yeah, I'm going to. That is interesting. Yeah, feel free to use. People need to use what they feel comfortable on. Yeah, for me, the agentic is I'm going to use it in the AI pack and everything. And if this one is, better on things, I will use it obviously. So clients, source. I see it start. Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, that might be an interesting one. I don't know. I didn't check. I will look at it. I think it's a new stuff, yeah, because a while back I checked, but it's good. It's good that they are doing that. Yeah, because I checked this and I didn't see that. So it's a new one. Okay, this is interesting. I mean, feel free to do the stuff. Anyway, part of this is a lot of the client stuff and things, so it's going to be interesting. So anyway, so here is the thing that is receive async. And typically I'm going to do a S2C MCP request. So I'm getting the request here. I was expecting to get this guy, but not that guy. Oh, okay, cause no SCP RC. Okay. What is this error? But I don't understand who. So usually what I will do is I will do something like that. So I'm a print debug kind of guy. I will press R. So this is good. It goes there. And then the thing I don't understand is then in my connect, I'm going to do this one. I'm going to do that. That should go first, yeah? Oh. Okay. Okay, so why? Oh, you know why? I know why. Okay, that's good, that's good. Because I don't do that early enough. Yeah, I need to do that. Yeah, awesome. I need to do that first. Now it should not give this error. Cool. Oh, this even works. My God. So the reason why is because we run that first. Yeah, so, because of the way it works, it was receiving the events because the connection and stuff, and then it was trying to get, and it was too early. So I think this one is the right way of doing it. Because the run, yeah, now it works nicely. So that is pretty cool. And so we get our stuff here, but we don't. So we have the try here. So I do a search like that, then do a try like that. And then I should have the pretty here, run txt. I'm going to do this. Yeah, so that is this one, going that, so that's good. So right now it doesn't know what is the MCP stuff. And then on this guy, I'm going to do so now that we have this, so that we're sending that there, and then that means that in our run, we should get the message. Should we get it? Why we're not? We might have getting it here. Putting that to make sure that our println. Oh, my debug print, and then MCP request. Okay, so we're going to see that. MCP request is cool. That is the stuff. And so now what we want in this MCP request is calling the sampling guy. So I'm going to go there. I'm going to search for that guy. I'm going to remove a little bit of noise because it's getting confusing. I don't need that. I'm going to take that. Well, actually, I'm going to take the whole thing because we have the things that we want to have. Okay, so that is pretty cool. That's pretty neat. And then, so we go back to our server request. We have that guy now. Okay, we can do the pretty. And then we should have pretty like this. Should work pretty nicely. So here you can see that I do the unwrap or else, to just make sure it's always a string, because we're in a loop. And so when you are in event base, you need to be careful about, doing kaboom. You want to manage your thing. Yeah. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back down. So that is what we have, which is perfect. And we are going to create that, create this. And again, if there is an error here, it will continue. I don't complain. And then I'm going to create that. This one cannot fail. And I'm going to put that back down here. Okay, putting that. So that is the way I will code. Yes, I'm showing you the way I code. So the reason why I do that is sometimes there's two kind of approach of coding. One is putting breakpoints everywhere, which is valid. And then the other one is to put print everywhere, yeah? Which is, I think, is valid as well. Now, people have strong emotion one way or the other. I think either one is okay. For me, because I like even base architecture, the print is a little bit better, even if, again, the breakpoint is good. And in Rust, print is much simpler than breakpoint. But I'm not saying, if you like the breakpoint things, feel free to, it makes sense as well. All okay, so that's pretty cool, yeah? So we got the message. So now it's starting to get interesting, yes? So I'm going to go back to this guy, git log. I don't want to amend this because it's not this. And we're going to do, see, I'm going to do the tilde, and I'm going to say MCP Client use sampling first pass at Rustinex. Okay. So that is pretty cool, because now we do these kind of things here where we run, we do that. So we do that, and then over there when we send, in fact, I'm going to do is more of this. Commit, amend, and I'm going to do more something like that. Okay. So that is the way. And so now the cool thing here, when we do our cargo watch, is we have the all okay, which means that we went through all the process here. We got the thing and stuff. Now, to complete our loop now, is what we want to loop, we want to call the sampling function. And so that is where it's going to get a little bit trickier, and we might have another live for that. But now, let's say that in our client implementation, we have our sampling order, sampling guy. It's inside the arc, and we have this box din sampling async fn, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So what we're going to do is, and we did the whole thing, yeah, last time. And I updated a little bit to make sure we can capture things. This is pretty cool. When we go there, we have this guy where we register our sampling. So I'm going to do, and it's ugly, but so that is a way where we say, hey, client, register your sampling handler, and then you have these kind of things. Yeah. So that is the one that you are using for. And then we are going to use that. And we are going to So now what we want is to call this. And if we get that, we're the king of the hill. And so the way we're going to go back to our client implementation. And again, the reason why it's called client implementation is I like my mod.rs to not have implementation. I've grown to like this pattern. So you just say what it is below and what is getting flagged out and everything. That is already quite a bit of information. The cool thing with that is with AI, this is amazing because you know that all of your lib, your main, and your mod.rs is going to be very small, so you can give them all. And then the AI has a very good idea of your namespace, the scope of the thing at a very low cost in a way, because there's no implementation. So that is what I like, which happened to work well with AI, I think. And one of the reasons why this guy is client implementation is because Clippy, and I have a lot of respect for Clippy, doesn't like inception kind of things, and names being twice. So that's why I have this kind of way here. And then what we have is that guy, which is, so that is good. And so that's why we have the name, and then we go to client, and then we're going to go to our connect, pairs, and then is going to be in our run over there, what we want to do. So this one is running. That is where we want to call our sampling request. So what we're going to do is now we need to take this guy, let sample, because we cannot have self here. This is not possible because Rust doesn't know that the reference of self is going to live longer or shorter than this Tokyo span. So we cannot give that. Now what we can give is an arc or something. So let's something that owns something. So we're going to do that, self, this, clone. That is completely fine. Okay, that's fine. So what we're going to do here's an option. But I'm saying, you know, when we run that, run server request, we should have that in. If not, we're going to complain. So say, because like that, we don't have to do the check all the time. So I'm going to say this clone, and then I'm going to say, okay, or cannot start client, no server request, no sampling handler. And then we're going to do an into. Okay. So that should be pretty good. Well, why does it complain? Yeah, that's fair enough. It complains because we don't have the question mark. And then it complained because, why does it complain here? Okay. This one needs to be create error custom. So perhaps that will work better. Okay. The into, it didn't know, it didn't find his ducks. So we have this, and so we know that now we have this kind of guy and no sampling handler. So this guy is starting to complain now. So that's fine. We go back to the contact over there, to the connect. And we do not have the sampling handler. Oh, my mistake. Okay, that's cool. That's cool stuff. So that strategy of doing that is not good. My strategy wasn't good. It looks smart, but it's not. And the reason why is that that will require the user to register before the connect. Which is, I'm not sure, is something we want to do. So what we're going to do rather than that is we're going to move that there. I think this is much better. So, sorry. First, we're going to do this, and we need to do the clone. Okay, so that for sure. Oh, damn it. Okay, that's interesting. If I do the clone here, so in our client here, how do we get it? Yeah, we'll have our okay, we're going to do that now. We're going to do that this way. And the reason here is because if I clone this, even if you set it after, we'll have the one that we cloned before, and so we'll have the known anyway, except if we have a mutex. So that is a little bit painful here. So what we're going to do is going to do something like that when we have the value, and we're going to assume here cannot start client, no sampling handler. We do not want to do that because we do not want to break if the thing. So what we're going to do is more something like, we're going to clone it for now. Okay. And then we're going to say two things. One is, and I'm not super happy, but then the other option, it will be to have the thing inside a mutex. Yeah, which is kind of so-so, but could be good too. Could be the way we want to have it. I don't know. But right now we're going to say, we are going to require the thing. So if, okay, we're going to do that. So we're going to say, we're going to use a let else pattern. So let sum sampling handler equal sampling handler. And we're going to say, by the way, it's tricky because we say sampling handler when it should be, yeah, we should have some sort of router or something. So sampling handler and then else, we're going to info okay, I'm moving back and forth here, but okay, I'm going to do that like this. This is more flexible. So before, for each loop, and I could do that because we don't do the mutex here, so I will do to do, use mutex to get the latest sampling handler, and then we have another to do here. Request, and then to do for now only support this sampling under no routing. Okay, so that is the way it is. And then we have the to-do here, and we're going to do let some stuff. And that should be ref. And then we're going to continue. And then this one, why it doesn't like this one? Cannot sampling in the scope. Okay. Sampling handler, mistake, sorry. As ref. It's already as ref, is it? No. Well, I could clone it, I guess. No, I don't need. Yeah. Or to use it as ref. Okay. So that basically should kind of info that. But okay, so why did it info that now? So the weird thing here is that we had the let some handler as ref. Info this client does not have any sampling. We should see that. Oh no, sorry. Info. Yeah, so this is the stuff here. Now, why does he go crazy here? So first of all, it should be should probably be a warn here. Oh my God, it's because we do a loop, yeah. So I'm going to do, I should do it there into this guy. Okay, this is a good place to do it. Yeah, so like this, every time we get MCP stuff, if we don't get the thing, and that now we should make it higher error. Okay, so now that is going to be pretty cool. It doesn't compile anymore. Oh yeah, obviously. Okay, now we get the error. This client doesn't have any sampling. The reason why is because our sampling was done after the connect. So right now, we need to do something like that, where we... No, that's good. We create a client, we register the sampling, and then we do the transport. Okay, and now we shouldn't see any error. Going good. Our sampling get called. And now, this is actually pretty cool. Git log, muscle memory, git amend. So we're making good progress here. And I think we're going to be pretty close. And then if we do that, I'm going to call it a wrap. So this session here was a little bit long. So sometime I don't know if I should make them public for a while or not. They are going to stay public, unlisted at least for 24 hours. So you make sure, or 48 hours. So I would keep this one listed for a while if you are missing and coming back. And then this one, I'm not sure if I'm going to put it or not. What I'm looking at all the time to know if I put something public for extended is if the concurrent viewers stay above my normal one, above 20, like me is like 20, 30 things, then I'm saying, oh, okay, I might extend them. So that is the way I'm thinking right now. Now, if you are live members, you always have access to all these kind of things. Eventually, they come back to the loop. And you can have it in the playlist, live member only. But otherwise, except if it's requested, things. Now, if you want to have it longer, unlisted or whatever, add a comment below, and then I have no problem to extend it a few days or whatever, or a week or whatever. So the thing here that I'm going to do is now I have the async here. We have the before, it doesn't complain. We did the commit, and so now we're going to fix that guy. Can go back to the client implementation. Oh, we're not calling yet. Yeah, so we're doing this pretty continue, and we need to put the thing here, error MCP request is not sampling, request, no params. And then we have another one here from value. If it's not here, I should capture the error, but it's not a sampling. It's not a sampling request. Parsing as failed params. Fail parsing as stuff is good enough. Then we continue. So just to know what's going on right now, it's just do these kind of things. It's fine. We have the MCP request, and now we want to do the famous call. So we have the all OK here, which we are here. This is the print of the other guy. And now we want to finally call this guy, which should be, because we have the let else here, that should be a sampling handler. So we do a sampling handler, and then we're going to do exec, please, fn, params. This could be so cool if it worked. We're going to create this guy. Why is it the params that it takes, or is what? Oh, is it the params? We don't even need the guy. So we don't even need that, because this function should recreate everything. And then we're going to take the create message params that we get over there. Press save. Yeah, doesn't complain too much. That's pretty cool. We should be able to have that await stuff. We cannot have the error because it's not a function, and we don't want, because we don't want to break the loop. So we're going to do that, and we're going to do match. And we're going to do something await like this. Command dot. Okay, which is, I think, nothing, but res, that should be a void. Oh no, sampling message. Okay, so now we're going to have to do the thing here. This is interesting. So now we need to have another guy, and that should be a println. No, not println, error. So right now it's only sampling, even if the function is a little bit more generic, but that's good for now. That's good. And then, so that is pretty cool. So that is, we have some error processing when we call this function, which is good, which is going to be the case actually. Error processing, exactly, yeah. So that works actually well. So the non-happy path works good, works amazingly well. Because we got, in this guy, custom async closure, actual sampling logic is not implemented, which is that guy. Async closure, actual sampling logic is not implemented. So far, it's pretty good. So now, if we want the happy path, this is where we have the sampling request. We can go back there. We are going to return an error. We don't really need to print that at this point. We are going to return the thing that we return below as a hack. This very nasty hack that we did. And create message result. Okay, that's fair. So we're going to do that. And, oops, sorry. Go back to the examples on top over there. And that is probably something I need to think about. Because what we return on that work is a create message result. So I don't know why it has sampling message over there. Yeah, that was an error of me. That's fine. So that is going to be for our little ride here. And that will be this one, create message result. And then I'm going to say, okay, message result. Okay, now this is going to be kaboom because I messed up those guys, which is fine, which means that in the client now, our sampling handler, this is not that, should be that. And now everything compiles. That was an easy fix. So when I did the signature of the thing, I took the wrong type. So, but it was cool because before in the previous live, we did this part. So that's pretty good. So now that we have this, we are going to go back to our client thing over there. And so we don't need that. We're going to be here. So the result here should be that guy, correct? And now I need to do that guy. By the way, if you want to, if you want to jump in to ask questions in things, feel free to jump in there, and you can ask questions live on MS Team. Once we have done that, I think we'll be good for the day. But I just wanted to have these kind of things, and then the thing I'm saying is no, not that. I'm going to do the sampling request. Now I'm going to bring back the request. So that is MCP request. So that is going to be cool. So now I should have MCP response. Okay. And that should have ID. And this should be the MCP request ID. You still have it there, yeah. And then the result, and that should be that guy, that res, okay, which is this guy. Press save, does it compile? Compiles, awesome. And then, because that compiles, I'm going to do a return, not a return, sorry. Now, so we're almost there, yeah? Because in fact, I can go there. I should be able to remove the hack. We're not going to remove everything, but we're going to remove that guy. Now, if I press save, we should see before but not after, which is, you know, it's normal. But then if we can send, so now what we have here is this MCP response. So this is cool, yeah? We have now this MCP response, but now we need to send back the response. And that is where, oh my God, we need thinking. That is where we need this guy here, which is a guy that is going to send information over there, which is, if I go back to my things that we updated now. So if we go back to this guy, we simplified it because we took this out, and then we have client to rec, I think, this guy, and then server to client TX. I think this is what the two that we have. So now what we want is to have the client to server TX. This is what we want. So for that, and this crate may be a little bit too deep for live coding. I'm experimenting right now, the kind of thing. So those stuff might be a little bit too deep for live coding. So I'm not sure because the code might be a little bit too big. I don't know. And so now what we want is the client TRX here that we have. So what we want is a client. We want to be able to send something. So it's the client to TX kind of guy, which is sometimes called the in. And so this is this guy. So I'm going to have, is it, are we in connect? Yeah, we're in connect, cool. So I'm going to clone that because I want to send one guy to that guy, whoever it is. Oh, actually, let's not do that. We're going to come here, go back one. We're going to rename this one C2S TX. Save, much better. So now that means that we can, remember we had a function which was a try in TX. Okay, so we're going to use that. I'm not going to rename it for now. And then we're going to do, this is what is happening over there when we send request row. Okay, so I'm going to do that. The runner, I'm going back to my runner. No. So now I'm going to do try in TX. Yeah, so that is the one that we need to do, and we're going to clone it. And then if we don't have, we'll have an error. So I think, and so now what we want is on this run server to TX, what we want is over there, yes, send to client to TX. So the way we are going to do that is run server request, and at this point, things should be set up with our communication. So we should be able to do a let self, not left, client to server TX equal self try this guy, yeah, which is our client to server TX. Yeah, nothing complain, that's good. We have the all okay, but it's not all okay because we have the before, but we don't have the after because it is waiting for the sampling to happen. So now that I have this, I have a result of things. So here I'm going to do a question mark to say if it's not, we do a kaboom. And then we want to do a clone because we cannot pass a reference to this. Yeah, so right now it's saying, why are you cloning? I guess called clone a reference in this situation does nothing. Okay. Yep, that's fair. I think they have clone. No, this guy doesn't complain. So if you don't implement clone, when you call clone, you will clone the reference, I think, and then, you know, it doesn't do anything. So what we want is the clone. Okay. The reason why we want to clone again is we cannot have a reference to give it to spawn. Yeah, we need to have things. So we have that, and then we do a C2S, and then we're going to do a pretty. Don't care about the pretty right now. We're not. Yeah, that's fine. Well, the pretty, we're like printing it here, so it's working now. We're just finishing that. Now we want to do a send like that, and so we're going to do a send, which is fine. And then we should be able to say send, correct? And that we should send our message. Okay? Payload. Because this guy only knows about string, which is what we want. So if we click on this guy, ComTX is just about string, just protocol, down to the protocol. So now what we're going to do is, how do we get the payload to that? We get it from there. So yeah, I'm creating response here. It's like this. So let res. The reason why I could have used JSON, it wouldn't have done an error, I guess. But I'm going to do a CD JSON to string. Not pretty, I want one line. And then I'm going to do this res. It's a reference. And unfortunately, it returned an error. And so what we're going to do is something like that, I guess. Yeah. Which is, if it's okay, res, we're going to return res. And if it's an error, we're going to do a error. We're going to keep track, error, okay, while serializing what is it? MCP response. Can to server. And I could probably even put the res, something like that, which I'm not sure it's good idea or not. And then, important here, we do the continue. In event base, every time you do event base, this is super important to do that. Usually, I do question mark and everything, but you cannot do question mark because we're inside a loop and inside a closure and stuff. So you want the loop to keep going because otherwise it might get tricky. So that is what we do. And that will be our payload string. And then we send the string. And then if it works, we can go on it. Oh. Okay, that's fine. We're going to client to server send. Oh, dot await. And now I still need my thing. And this is why I will probably you see one thing I will do here actually, because I don't want everybody to worry about doing the error, but I don't want to lose the error either. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something like that, which is match that guy. And then I'm going to say, if it's okay, I think it's okay, yeah. If it's okay, I'm going to return okay. And if it's not, if there's an error, and that means that sometimes you might double things. Oh no. Okay, good. Sorry, I think I got hung for a second here. Something got lost, but I got reconnected, so that's good. So now I got the error. I cannot have the item because I sent it there. So I'm going to do that. So that's not a lot of information, but I'm going to return the error. And I think I need to do it into like that. No? Yeah, okay. So this one will always print not a lot of information, but upstream, they can get the information. So I'm okay with that. So now what we're going to do is back there. And I'm going to send notification. Am I still live? Yeah. Send tx, okay. Payload, okay. Await, okay. And then, well, we don't need it. We'll see if he complains or not. Just not, I mean, it's mixed on this guy. Before, after. This is magic. I mean, you have to go very deep to understand what, I mean, it's awesome. It's working. It's actually working. We did all of the stuff. This is what message specing is the channel business is very cool because everything is asynchronous, but then they meet. If you want to fake a request response, you can keep the one shots. And so that what's happening now is we have that guy, which is beautiful because we don't have the hack anymore. This crazy hack is not there. We have our sampling, which we register once. We can capture data if we wanted to capture. We're just responding a create message result. So that is the thing that will go to the thing, to the AI. So in my case, I will use GenAI over there to call there and then to come back. Yeah, so that is what I will do. And I will create a GenAI client, clone it, and give it to that. And that will be able to do my client. And I clone it only if I need it later. So that will do the work. And then we are finishing creating our Connect business here. Today there's a ordering thing that we need to follow. And then we do our client, we do our request. And in fact, this, I'm going to commit that because it works. And then I'm going to change it the way that we want it. Because now we shouldn't have to do in another Tokyo spawn. So before we had it because we were doing the fake sampling there. But now the sampling is still fake, but it's there. Yeah, and so it's done the correct way as a sampling handler. So the thing is, this is where I want it to be. Yeah. So I'm going to do that. And this is beautiful. So I'm going to do this, git C, and git log. So I'm going to keep this one sampling arrests. And I'm going to git C, and I'm going to do minor, yeah, probably sampling. Pass working with register sampling. Handler. That's good enough. And now what we're going to do, so this is awesome because it works. And so that means that, again, what's happening here was long today, but it was good. What's happening is that the client is saying, hey, call the tools LM sampling. And the LM sampling is a test tool of the official examples. Node.js that will then call sampling, and then we go back to transport. And it will make that our client become a server of this request. And then it waits, the tool is waiting for the sampling to go back again and to say, hey, our sampling, here's a response, and then the tool can respond. This is what's happening. And now the cool thing about that is the way that we have implemented it. It was this way, so everything works very nicely. So this guy, I can go here, look for that guy. And we can say we don't care about this anymore. So that is, So here I'm adding these comments over there, which say basically use, this case, we're assuming that we have the Tokyo ahead of time because we're cloning it here, so then it won't change ever at the beginning. And so we need to have the register sampling before. Yeah. So today, assume register sampling handler before connect. Otherwise, need to use mutex to get latest sampling under to allow sampling. Yeah, that will be the thing. So that is what is fine. So in our case, it's okay. Then after we go, and then not today, no routing. Assume server request can only be sampling request. Okay? And that might be okay. I think pairs the spec is okay. For me, when I'm going to do the server, I'm going to be more flexible. So everything works. I do a git log for muscle memory, and then I'm happy about getting git amen to this guy. And now this one, so we did this like spawn, but now we don't need that anymore. So we can remove that. Remove that. We're going to keep the sleep just in case we don't need two of them. Save. This one doesn't complain. Why does it complain? Okay. Okay, I'm going to go back to my working stage. I'm going to go back that, because that was weird that it didn't. I'm going to remove that and remove that. And I don't see why that will make anything complain. Okay, so why does this guy is complaining? No, I think there's a... Okay, this is silly. Commenting this one. Now it compiles. Ah, this is annoying when it does that. Oh, I don't need to client clone, I guess. But it should be okay to client clone. I don't know. Okay, so this one is this one. It doesn't complain. Perhaps is that. Okay. Now this is this guy. We do the before, we do the after. Why does he complain? Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, because he has returned, so it was the wrong type. And this one, why does he complain? Mention compatible type. That's fair enough. Also, we can do, well, actually, it's even simpler. We can do a question mark over there. That's it. And then we remove the match. And then we have the after. And then we sleep because we like to sleep. And then that's it. So we shouldn't need that, shouldn't need that. This one we need because we have some ping pong there. I'm not even sure it's needed. But we're going to keep it for now. This one we delete. And I think if that works, we're in a good shape. Oh, that works. So that all is okay before and after. That's cool. Now it's a little bit disappointing because you say, well, you do before after, but thanks to the all okay, we can remove it. I don't know where is this all okay business. Okay. So that's why I like my little notation here. We're getting closer. It's getting good. And now I'm going to say going to say, I'm going to say let res cd JSON to string, and then the reference of res, question mark, not a wait. And then we're going to say one print. I don't need the debug print because that will be for my sample here. And then tool response, sampling, and that will be our pretty guy. Pretty. Okay. And then that is after. We're going to remove the after. So, after. So this one is after. We don't need anymore the after. Thanks. Now our code is very simple, but it's awesome. And then that's it. So that basically is a response. And now there's no hack anymore. This is pretty cool. So you register your sampling, and then you have this kind of guy now. Everything works very nicely. Okay, so that was an interesting session. I'm going to put that inside the as unlisted right now because the retention was average. So when it's high, I'm putting it public and then extended. Otherwise, I put it unlisted for a little while and then to the live stream members forever. So like this, they can rank it. And then, they can watch it whenever they want. And then that's it. So now this is pretty cool. So I'm going to go back there. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Git status, git add. And then we're going to go a git c, git log. I'm going to get amend here. So git log to make sure I didn't push that. I'm going to add it a little bit on the more confident side, which is git add, git commit, git amend, which is an alias of mine that does a amend, and then I do this one, and I'm going to actually change that as a plus. So that's my little kind of best practices. I do this dot for minor, plus for something new, dash for a fix, and then there's other ones. And then I do that. Okay, so that is pretty cool. So I'm going to push that. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. And then, yeah, I think that this one is starting to work pretty nicely. And the goal is that this agentic crate will do the MCP and agent-to-agent business. So that is the current goal of this agentic crate. There's also the Rust SDK official, which I learned today here. So I didn't find it in their things when I was there. So this one seems to be, the Rust guy here seems to be a little bit, oh yeah, so it's a commit here. And when did it started? So this one is interesting as well. I have no emotion at all. This is not, for open source crate, it's silly to be competitive. It's nice to be focused on one approach. So I'm not saying that their things is better or less. Right now, I like a lot the ergonomic of the API I've developed, which obviously I'm biased, but I'm going to give a crack at it. The core crate providing MCP protocol implementation. If you want to get more information, please. MCP. So MCP. MCP, yeah. And then MCP protocol create a generating MCP tools implementation. If you want to get more information, thanks. Yeah, this one is going to get more use, no brainer, because it's the official stuff. So I don't even want to compete on usage and stuff. I'm not sure yet, but I want to be relatively open-minded about this one. And so I will look and play with that. And then if we go start a client, client serve, Tokyo shall process new NPX. So that is a little bit configure CMD. Oh, that's funny. They put the configure as a closure. Might be a reason for that. And yeah, but then they don't show how to build transport. No. So let's do that. I'm going to do that live. I'm going to go to the examples, to the clients, to that guy. MCP features. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I'm not. So here, a couple of things that I'm going through my mind is one is a lot of features to keep track of, but that might be good, might be bad. When you do transports, I think anyway you need to have our transport. So I'm not sure the value of that, value of this, for example, because. But again, they are the official ones, so I think they have to be more generic. For me, if you support SSC, this one is this guy. If you support SSC or streamable, that's my take, yeah? Yeah, I don't see why you would bother the user of the crate which one you want to support. I don't know how much you will save in the binary size to justify the switch. And anyway, when you use and you talk to a server, there's a way with MCP to be backward compatible, and you probably want that anyway. So that this kind of things, I'm not sure. Requests, I'm saying, well, if they have that, does mean they support multiple HTTP client, I guess? And then again, in my head, it's like, interesting. Tower is interesting because it means that they're reusing the routing business of Tower, which might be good. So that is interesting, and I'm going to look at that. For me, I have the RPC router, which is actually very ergonomic, so I don't know. And then the auth, that is interesting. The auth is a whole kind of form, so it's always a little bit tricky. All of this is good. Anyhow, I will assume it's just for the example. I'm not a fan of anyhow, but I don't think that is a requirement. Tower, understand. I don't understand why this guy is. Oh, yeah, because they have the HTTP. No, I don't understand. Sorry. I don't understand why this guy is there. Because if you do the client, you shouldn't need Axum. If you do a server, there's a point of using Axum. But a client only, I'm not. But I might be missing something. I mean, obviously, these people, they know what they're doing. So it's not a judgment of quality of expertise or whatever. It's more what goes through my head when I parse that. And then they have the client like that. So this one is pretty interesting. Client git staff path git stdio. So let's look at that. So the tracing business, the service, which is now MCP server. So that's okay. UVX, I'm not sure what it is, but what is a UV? UV is something it is. It is a Python thing, UVX. I think it's a Python thing, yeah. Yeah, I think it's a Python thing. So that is interesting because they don't use the. Oh yeah, because this MCP server is a thing, so that's why. And then they have the client, they initialize here. So that is service P info is interesting. Tokyo, so that is just tracing business. Looks strange. Yeah, okay. Where do you see the... Oh, yeah. Service, yeah. No. Yeah. Am I dumb or what here? Where is that? Okay, you're right. I don't know what this guy is. Tools, list results. So then you do the server info. So this one, here's a way that could work, okay? And good one, Max here. So this is cool. The way that could work, I mean, the way I has to do, yeah, is someone, I don't know if it's Tokyo or someone, I don't know who it is, implemented the serve, whatever trait it is, under the void type. So that is what is happening here. So that is not a thing, is someone did that. I don't know if they found that cute, like jQuery cute kind of business, and say, hey, you know, this is a way to have whatever. But this seems to be the thing. And it could be, it has logic, yes, is if I'm implementing something. Now, I don't know why we are saving. Oh, yeah. Yeah, might be saving something. Yeah. Or client, or serve client. Okay, that's fine. And then we have the initialize, which is okay. No, they say initialize, but it's peer info, so I'm not sure what it is. And then they have the list tools, so default, that's fine. I think it will work like mine. Tracing info. And then the service, which is what we have on top. And then the call to request param, which is similar to what I'm doing with my staff. And then they have the trace. And then they have the cancel, yeah, which is interesting. I don't know why they cancel it here, but it's probably the way. So this is interesting. No, I haven't seen. Thank you, Learning Russ. I haven't seen this guy at all. I'm going to continue the agentic kind of crate. I think I have a good base. Again, I'm relatively emotionless if I need to change stuff. When I see here, I know that this is a serious crate. It's not a judgment of value, of expertise, or whatever. There's stuff that are a little bit more verbose, but overall it looks relatively decent. I'm mixed right now, and one of the reasons is for my agentic, I want to use it in the AI pack, and sometimes when you use a crate that has been built for something else stuff, you do a lot of contortion, and so I want to give it a fair shot with the agentic. Now, I'm not sure if I need to continue to do a live, these kind of things. I saw, and it makes sense, when people say, hey, there's a Rust official SDK for MCPs, and you always tend to use that, which is normal. I mean, I would say, hey, give it a try with that. Yes, I'm not. And I might do a live one of this point, and I will make it clear in the live that it's the Rust official MCP stuff. So I might play with it, and I might do a live, or I might even do a scripted video about the official MCP. I think this one, I have a lot of things that I want to do with the RPC router and things, and I think it can snap it pretty well. So I'm going to continue to work on that. but I'm going to watch those guys. And I think the other one, the Poem. Yeah, but the Poem MCP server, okay, this is a very interesting here. Rust, Poem, MCP server. This is, so first of all, it's awesome that people are doing MCP because I think that Rust is one of the best language to do MCP servers, bottom line. STDIO and stuff and everything. So it's cool to have those kind of things. I do think that a good MCP should be protocol independent. So for example, when I do the thing, and I'm going to look at it, create.io dependencies. Yeah. So, okay. So here the spider sense that goes in my head is just by looking at the dependencies, what it tells me. It tells me, but they know, they're using that, makes sense. ITER tool is interesting. So this means that there is some, yeah, that's good. I might try to use it one of these days, these guys. I don't know. I haven't, I've seen it time to time. I've never deep into these guys. Mine good, print project light, yeah. And that is a thing which is interesting, which tells me that I think they have done their own MCP guys. So I'm going to close here. This is more of a macro. So again, it might be nice. I don't know what to think about it. Okay, so here's what goes to my head. First, I think MCP server should be decoupled from whatever server it is. Yeah, so I think Poem is Rust Poem. It's like a web server business. Yeah, and the web server business kind of thing. A program is like a poem. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Easy to wave from. So it's like Axum. Yeah, it's you have Axum or Poem or whatever. So it's at this level. There might be a higher level. I don't know. I'm a big fan of Axum, but this one might be good too. Yeah. I think MCP is more something on top of it that something that is fully embedded. Yeah, I mean, it has to be embedded in a way, but it should use like common types. And I think they might over time. They probably have started this one and they might use at least the common type of the MCP, the official MCP. In fact, if you look at the official MCP, I mean, one thing that they could have done is MCP types, to have all the types, all the parsing business, and then people can build on top of it their own handlers. The fact that they are doing their own MCP stuff might be good, but for me, for example, I'm planning to do MCP for my AI pack, for my web application, helping clients doing MCPs, servers or clients, and it's independent of the web framework that I should use. So that is a little bit my take here. When I see that, I'm not 100% sure it's there. And then me, I'm more into the Axum kind of things. And if the YouTube was my full-time business, I will do tutorial for everything. But big thanks for the people that are supporting me. You're making a big difference. But I'm not at a point where I can drop off the clients and everything and focus on tutorials of everything. So for me, Axum is my go-to, and I go with Axum. I'm the biggest fan of Axum. And then I'm adding that on top of it, which I've already done for JSON RPC, my Rust web app. And so for that, it's a little bit the same thing. Now, one thing here with MCP, I think people are going to realize over time is that because of these kind of things, of sampling, for example, sampling is a good example, and then you have notifications and all these kind of things, it has to be stateful, which means that you have a session ID when you do a request and everything, which is a little bit same thing that when you log in, yeah, you have a session ID and stuff. And that adds a little bit more kind of things. And the routing, because it's JSON RPC, has to be on the body. And right now, all the frameworks, until now, but they are going to change, they've done the routing of the framework on the meta, but not on the body. So URL or headers or whatever, but they don't do body because you pass the body once. Yeah. And so that is one of the things. And so that's why when we did JSON RPC for the REST web app, like a few years ago, because we always do JSON RPC, you have to write another layer for the RPC routing. And what you want is that the RPC router, so I have a create RPC router, is completely independent of the protocol. So it's like for me, I use RPC router, the same one for my web apps than my Tori apps, even before MCP. And so my goal is to try to link the whole thing together, such as you can do an RPC API without MCP, or you can add MCP, and all these kind of things. And every time is this JSON RPC business, going. So that is a little bit the goal. But again, all of that is interesting. So I will use these kind of things. When I see that, it's fine. There's some interesting stuff there. But otherwise, it looks relatively decent. What do they have else? Everything STD Okay, so this is the one I have. So tracing, same as me. Yeah, so yeah, we're going to compare. Let's compare with the big boys. Because they are the big boys. Okay, so we have that. We have those guys. Yeah, so same thing as my lib. Here's the tracing, which is always good. Sometimes I don't do. I should do more. They have some fancy stuff here. I'm not as fancy. The client, create a client, one line. How do they create a client? So for them, it's different. Oh, okay. To be fair with them, no, I don't understand what they are doing. Start the server. Okay, so I'm going to assume that's fair. I'm going to assume that what they are doing right now is they are starting the server, which is a similar thing that what we're doing when we are doing the connect. No. So for me, I have a client SCIO transport config, which has a command and the args and the current dir. And then when you connect, a config become a transport protocol, which is an opaque trait. What they have is they are starting a server with this void here. So this means that they have a trait that implement void. Might be a good reason for that. And then they're giving this command there, and then they have this configure as a closure, which is interesting. Might be a reason for that. I'm not sure why that needs to be dynamic, but there might be a reason. And then they await here. So we're going to say, well, that's the way that I create the transport. Not sure what they await. Not sure what they await for, because what they're saying here is initialize, which is a service peer info, which is interesting. But this one, I don't. But now there's probably more English than me, yes. But for me but I've been living in San Francisco for 25 years. I've been in the US longer than I've been in France, but I still have my airport accent. I think I have a problem with my ears. But the point is that here I do the connect. And so for me, it's a transport protocol. And when you do the client connect, this is where you have a connection from your client to your server. And that is where the first message initialize is sent. And that is protocol agnostic. You can change HTTP protocol, for example. Here we do a client HTTP transport config, gives the URL, and then you connect. That assumes, obviously, that the server is already started. Yeah? We are not, when you create a client, you are not in the business of creating a server. Now, I could add a command, unrelated command start, server there, but I like to do it manually. But not sure why there's a server business in the client API. Okay, so that's my first things. But again, I must be missing many things. Yeah. So now the PRFO for me, when I read the documentation and stuff, I'm not really sure it's a thing. Yeah, might be a thing. I don't know. But for me, there's connect, which does initialize, and then that's it. That is a Node.js API, which I like. But there might be a reason here. But that is what this line, this is what I do over there, connect. Okay. Now, one thing that we added today is this pretty cool register sampling handler, which is even when you have a client, the server can send you back a response. Yeah, this is this business here. Yeah. So when you do a tools that use sampling, the sampling can send a request back to your client via the transport, and then your client becomes a server somehow. Not somehow, becomes a server. And then that was interesting. I like this live actually. These people goes back up and down, but it's fine. So that was cool stuff. Good feedback, everybody. I love your thing. And then list tools. So list tools is very similar. Oh, that's funny. Wow, that's funny. And that. Oh. List tools. I have tools here. Okay. That means that they have a function. And that's fine. I can do that. That lists all the tools available. For me, the way I do it is I say, hey, if you want to list the tools, you create a tool request. So it's the same thing. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the code, it's like you do the new client, the transport stuff, you connect with the config, that will become a transport, whatever you are using. And then you say send request. And then here's a beautiful thing. You go to the send request, and then, I'm sorry, I'm proud of that because it took me a while. And the AI was like going stuff. And I use a lot AI, nothing bad. Yeah. But sometimes you have to, often you have to control it. So here I put the request, and the request is the trait request. One of these two guys, I think is this guy. This guy has request MCP result. So now I know the type to return. So the nice thing about this whole business here is that I can send a MCP request fully built, or I can send just a params. And if I send just the params, then it will create the unique ID, UUID, base 58 encoded, and that will be the stuff. So it's pretty cool. And so then what I get back is this guy, a nice, and then I do this nicely type, and then I do iter on tools. So I don't have a list tools. I could have a list tools, but that is, in a way, I prefer like that. But nothing wrong there. And then it calls the tools here, which is called tool parent. So this is super similar to me, except that it's interesting. In my case, with this tool here, again, so very simple. Interesting, actually, to compare the approaches. And the reason why I started is because I didn't find the Rust official thing. Otherwise, I would have given a shot. Now I think I am a little bit on a different path, and I'm not ready to pull out. And the thing as well is that, again, I'm going to connect it with RPC router and stuff, and I really want to keep it protocol independent. I love their transport agnostic approach. And so we have the client here. We do the transport here, which is HTTP, but here would be the same thing with HTTP. And then the way I do it is you create your parent. So that is a call tool parent. So actually it's probably exactly the same name. And the reason why it's the same name is because it's a name out the added request. So I didn't add request. I keep params with a S, which is a way that is in JSON RPC. And I didn't add the request because in my naming, I say, well, request is already implicit in a way. When you have params, it can only be on the request side. of a JSON RPC. So that's why I say, I don't need it. But that is completely valid approach. And so then they have this business, which is exactly what I have. So you can, in my case, you can create it by hand. So those guys are pub. Yeah. So you can set the meta. By the way, do they have meta? They don't have meta. They don't have meta. So anyway, so the spec here. So I follow the spec. Yeah. So I use a lot. So I controlled it, and then I had the whole spec of MCP, which was it's heaven. I mean, Anthropic guys, you're the best. You're probably not looking that, but you're awesome. And the fact that they have done the whole spec in TypeScript format. TypeScript is a very concise, expressive way of describing scripting types. And it goes beyond even TypeScript. Yeah, all this, it's a nice notation here. And so they have all these kind of things. So if you see here in request, you have the method names, you have params. But here, what they are saying in TypeScript is saying, no matter what, for any request, you may, it's true, but you still may have an underscore meta. And that is for the progress tokens and everything. So that is part of the spec. So for me, I follow the spec. And I say, okay, a request will have that, and that will be an option of stuff. And then you have other kind of name value pair, which is dependent on whatever you are calling. So that is the way it works. And so that's why, in my case, when I do the call tools, I do the new, and then you can either create a type manually, by passing everything, or I have kind of what I will call an inline builder API. So I don't have another builder. It's part of the things where you have the constructor here, that will be constructors, and then you can say with meta, with progress, and it's a consuming builder pattern. And so rather to do another builder, I decided to say, hey, in this case, it will be too heavy to have another builder, so I put everything in one builder. Sometimes, for other things, I have builders. I have nothing about separate builders, but it depends of what the object I want to do. But the pattern of the consuming one, to be able to, for example, append, and then I can have the convenient one, which is import into string and import into value. And that allows me to have a nice set of APIs. And then when I construct them by hand, which is not often the case because it will come from other stuff usually, but if I have to construct it by hand, which I mean by coding Rust, then it's becoming very ergonomic. New echo, append, message, stuff. And then that is the spec here that's sent, and then it sends a request, and then the request is a two-call result. Okay, that is a way. And what they have done here, which is very much similar, is they have done this business, which is a call to params, You construct all by hand. They don't have the underscore meta, but they might have underscore meta for other things, and I'm not sure. And then they have this call tool. My different, that is the echo, yeah? And I don't have the long-running stuff. I need to do that. But in our call tool, we have also two tools, the echo guys, and then the add 1+1. So that is a way that you can add this kind of thing, and then you just send the request. And that, if it's just a params, it will go into request, and the into request will add the unique ID and then everything. And what they have is very similar, yeah? So you don't worry about the ID. The things will take care of the ID, and then they call the tools. Now, the cool thing about my model, obviously, I'm a little bit biased here, but I can detach myself. I don't really care. The send request, if you send a param, it will create the ID for you, but you can create your own MCP with your own MCP request and send request the same thing, because an MCP request implement into MCP request, and you can implement it with your own ID, if you want to use ID or number or whatever. So that is interesting. So overall, it's relatively similar. So all these kind of things for me, I don't have a get prompt API. What I have is you create your request, you get prompt params. Yeah, so I'm sure I have a get prompt params. I'm having a, yeah, I have it because I have all the types. You get prompt params, you set the value. So sometimes I have with meta, with arguments, and append argument and everything. And by the way, once I have the pattern once, I ask the AI to add everything such as everything is consistent. AI is awesome. Use it, don't fear it. And then that allows me to do that. So here, without even looking at params, I knew I had it, get prompts, because I can send any request. So today, for example, my API, my approach, I'm not saying is a better one again, is I don't have a tool get prompt or get stuff. I say, hey, you send request, and whatever your params, because of the way the stuff is wired, you get the thing back. So if I wanted to send something else, I will, so for example here, and by the way, I never call this API. Yeah? So if I do this, I'm going to do a cargo watch example, which is my little alias, client C02, call, tool, I do that. That will be this guy. So this is a result of my two calls, okay, calling echo tools, calling add tools, and then I'm going to even call. So this is not really a tool. I don't like to have it here, but call prompt. We are going to build the params. So we are going to take this tab. This is pretty cool, actually. It's funny. We are going to get this guy here, simple prompt, argument nouns, and stuff. So the way that I will do that, I don't have the get prompts, but I will say build the params, okay? And I say let get prompts params, and then I will do something like get prompt params. I will do a new, and I will do, what do they have over there? Name. So I should have a name. Do I have a name? Yeah. Well, I don't like that. I should have a with name. Okay. Oh, yeah, okay. The new has a name. Sorry about that. The new has a name because otherwise what's the point? And then I can add meta, and then I can add arguments if I want. And then I can append arguments. So here I with arguments override the whole thing, or append argument and then it appends it. That's the way I decided to do it, which I like things. So I will do a new. I like a lot this simple prompt. Yep. And I can put its impl into string. And then I'm going to do a send request like that. I'm going to do this. Like this, I don't have to think it up. I get prompt params, and I get prompt result. Pretty good. And then I'm going to do the same thing as everywhere. Prompt like that, which is not JSON friendly, but prompt. Get prompt result. I'm going to do some padding here. I don't have. We have the prompt, we have the tool, and we have the prompt. Get prompt. The ID here, that is base 58 of the UUID v7. So if people want to have fun and get the date, otherwise they can use opaque, and then this is a simple prompt without arguments. That is what I sent. I don't know why it doesn't echo back simple prompts. But this is the way they have done it, for whatever reason. Oh, okay, very cool. Okay, so this is an error here that is not handled, but basically is, yeah, so it has it's a name, so the name cannot have space and stuff. So anyway, so that is, so the simple here is not related to that guy. Oh, no, I'm sorry, because it doesn't have, I'm being silly here. It doesn't have a simple. You are calling a prompt that the server knows about. And that is what simple prompt is one of the servers that it knows about. So the server has to send you back the prompt. And so that's it. So that is a way that I will do this kind of things here. So that thing, so it's about the same, except that this kind of service stuff is, the way that it initially is interesting. But it's, close to ergonomic. I think there's a little bit advantage there. But the downside of this is that this is not the official Rust stuff. Yeah. So, kind of use what you feel comfortable with. Okay. So I'm going to actually see, and I'm going to say minor example, add prompts. In call tools, which is not, could have been another example here, but GPO, and then that's it. You should have everything. If you have any questions, feel free to ask here. I'm going to wait a little bit if I can see that. Thanks a lot for everybody coming. It was kind of a long session. Sometimes they get long. If you have any feedback, feel free to send it to me inside this comment. This will be, I'm going to put this one as unlisted for a while for people that want to come back, and then it will go probably to the live stream. So sometime when I have one that has a very high view and I know that a lot of people want to see it as a public, then I put it extended, or even the transport one, I might put them unlimited, I don't know. It depends on the request. And if you want here, you can feel free to watch this one for, I'm going to keep it for a few days, and then it will go back to the live stream members only. Okay, if you have any question, feel free to ask me. I'm going to disconnect soon. Checking if no questions. There's always a delay here, but until next one.